Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, and allow me to apologize right out the gate if I sound a little off. I am fighting off a wicked cold right now. You know what I mean? And it has been a tough, 24 hours. But in that 24 hours, because the AMC here in Stamford was pretty empty. I had like a whole solid area around me to myself. I opted again on a Monday night to go to an AMC screen unseen rated R movie because it's a little bit easier to maybe identify what the rated R movies might be because there's only so many of them. And I had a pretty good feeling we were going to get the movie we got last night. And I was very, very happy when I walked out the theater. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into Boy Kills World. And oh my goodness, what a wildly insane action movie this is. Director Moritz Mohr had one hell of a vision to give us just an absolute, hyper reality, over the top, gory, bloody, brutal, violent action movie. I said coming out of the theater last night, this kind of gave me vibes of Matthew Vaughn's camera movements. There are just times in the movie where the camera almost feels like it's on an elastic cord as it kind of bounces around different action set pieces and then would swing into these really nice moving drone shots that just kind of gave me vibes of things that I'd seen Vaughn do before. And then stylistically, the movie just kind of gave me the shoot 'em up with Clive Owen from back in the day and Crank with Jason Statham, where you're just kind of in this world where it's it feels like everything is just on a lot of caffeine, and everything's dialed up. The hyper realism of what's going on, movements and things don't quite move the way you would expect them to. There's a speed and just insanity to the look of the film that I absolutely loved visually that Moore has. But the other thing too is when you start to look at the choreography that comes to us from stunt coordinator Dawid Szatarski, it's got raid vibes, and obviously having someone like Yaya Ruhian helps in that sense because he's been in all those raid movies, but it's got that kind of hand-to-hand combat action, and you feel that type of choreography mixed with the insanity of the presentation, and Moore gives us a version of action that, like I said, feels like things, but it is very much its own thing. And what I will say is the work between Moore, Szatarski, and cinematographer Peter Matjasko is insanely good, man. Those three guys are so in lockstep that even though there are times where I think the camera movements are a little erratic, at times where it almost feels like frames are missing in the way things are moving, and maybe sometimes a little bit too much cutting. Somehow though it all plays like it fits inside this movie, and anytime I'd be like, oh, we're moving the camera too much, or I'm not feeling like I'm seeing all the choreography the way I want to, then all of a sudden you get a stretch where it's like, oh my good god, this is exactly how I want to see all this stuff. And like I said, I don't think it ends up being too much of a negative, even with the camera cutting, because it's playing into the chaos that Moore is putting on screen in and around all of the action, and it does kind of deliver this hyper reality of what you're watching. And then there are just moments where the cuts bring you into places where the brutality and violence kick, where you're like, oh, that's a broken bone, or oh my goodness, I can't believe you just sliced that dude up in that specific way. And the other thing that I love about the stunt coordination from Szatarski is that there's a nice combination of hand to hand. There's some nice gunplay in here. There's some really wonderful gunplay moments. I think the biggest pops for me probably come off the gunplay because of the over the top with the blood and the violence, where it's there are just moments where the camera is in the right spot and you get a shotgun over the shoulder and a dude just fly. And I love all the gunplay. There's some nice sword work in here, and it's just a nice combination of different martial arts and modern action type things, where it kind of just feels like it gets thrown into a blender, and we're in the blender with everything that's going on. And it's a very, very unique style that I think works unbelievably through the whole movie. And like I said, Mohr's vision with Matjasko's cinematography and Szatarski's stunt coordination, like those three things are so in lockstep to create this wonderful vision. And then when you go to the script, right, like this is one of these movies where you could just sit back, have almost no script, and because the action is so enjoyable and the over the topness of everything that's going on is so entertaining, you walk out and be like, yeah, script wasn't that great, but like the movie was freaking awesome. But I do think that Mohr, along with his writers Tyler Burton Smith and Arend Remmers, come up with something that really works on the story side. I don't think all of the dialogue is always the best, but I also feel, again, that a lot of those choices and decisions are playing into the kind of chaotic vision of what we're getting inside of this, like I said, action blender almost. And what I do love about the script is that Boy, played by Bill Skarsgård, he has some traumatic event in his life that leads to the death of his mom and his sister. And he was young. He was like a boy at the time, and then he has, his little sister was, maybe, again, another one of these movies where you have like an 11, 12-year-old girl in here who crushes. And we will talk about Quinn Copeland. But it's one of these, like, as you're going through this revenge story, Skarsgård, the one thing that Boy can remember are moments with his sister. So Copeland pops up throughout the movie, and this bond between Boy and his sister obviously impacts me. Anytime you have a brother-sister bond or storyline going, it's going to connect with me immediately, and kind of really lock me in. And all of those elements, like when you're not in the action, I really do enjoy what you're getting story-wise in building out, like, why he can remember her. And the other part of this revenge of, like, just knowing I have to do this thing is kind of hoping that will start to uncover some of the stuff that he's lost. And I just thought the way that the three of them played with that throughout the course of the movie worked really well. And like I said, gives you enough of a revenge setup where you can tee up all your villains, from Hilda Vanderkoy, who's played by Famke Janssen, to June 27, played by Jessica Rothe, Melanie Vanderkoy, played by Michelle Dockery, and Gideon Vanderkoy, played by Brett Gelman, along with in-law Glenn is married to Melanie, but Glenn Vanderkoy, who's played by Charlotte Copley. So it ends up in one of these things where the way Mohr kind of sets it up, it has almost like a comic book video game vibe of like, here are the action villains you're going after throughout the course of the movie, and you're going to have to kind of go to each one. And as you move up the ladder, they kind of all level up in different ways. Copley is kind of like your level 1 guy. And that's the other thing, too, with the action, the way things are shot. It does at times give you kind of a video, like a chaotic, crazy video game vibe, which was a lot of fun too. But you kind of go from Copley up to Brett Gelman's character, who's kind of like the number 3 of the kids, to Michelle Dockery's character, who is very, very dangerous, but like as dangerous as she can be in what can happen around her and who she can have do what. The brains. Like she seems to be the brains of this group. And the muscle is Jessica Ross, June 27, who, when we talk about her and Bill Skarsgård, like, they are my 2 favorite things besides Yayan in the action realm. And then you lead to Famke Janssen, who's kind of the head of all of the everything, right? Like that's Bill Skarsgård's mission. And I love the way that it sets up in almost that kind of video game presentation vibe and kind of leveling up to these different bad guys. And each level is kind of the next piece in the story as Skarsgård kind of moves his way through the family. And then I'd like, that he has someone who looks out for him after this tragic event, right? You have the Shaman, who's played by Yayan Ruhian. So you get to have, him building Skarsgård up into this killing machine from the time he's like maybe 13, 14 years old, 15 maybe, to the time that he's, in his late 20s when this movie is taking place. He's spent all this time with the shaman, and it does establish the world in a way where, yeah, at times I don't think the dialogue is the best, but the overall story and the vibe that you're getting, I think, works and plays perfectly into all of the action things that you want to get to. And where you end up by the end of the movie, it certainly makes Boy a much more layered and interesting character. And I love that you kind of have that for this character in this insane action movie, because it could have been a very, very bare bones script and just action, 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 action. But when you're kind of looking at what's going on, the connections and things and the different levels to Boy and some of what's going on in his life, I think it is layered really nicely. And then the other thing too that I love is the humor. There is humor galore, and a lot of that is coming from Quinn Copeland. The way that she can kind of play with being like just a figment in his mind, like almost like a ghost. Like, I'm not really here, so I can yell and scream and do crazy things. And how that plays with Boy's own mental is a lot of fun. But her delivery and stuff just injects a lot of humor. And then you opt to make Boy deaf and mute because of this tragic event. So he picks this video game voice. Another thing, there's a video game that kind of inspires everything that's going on. So it plays very much like one of those arcade games, too, in certain ways. And the voice from the arcade game is Jon Benjamin. And if you know you're Jon Benjamin, I mean, this dude is a whiz in the comedy realm. And they really do tee up some wonderful things for him to do. And the voiceover, I think, works a lot, and it also kind of gives it a comic book vibe, which is always something that I dig. And you can kind of feel all of those different influences for Moore and the other two writers here, Burton Smith and Remmers, throughout the whole course of the film. And that mashup, that blender style combination of all these things, I think just really works presentation wise. And then when you get to the cast, Bill Skarsgård, I love this. I mean, I love all the Skarsgårds. I've been I'm very, very open about that on this channel. You can't go wrong anytime a Skarsgård is involved. And like the ones who aren't actors are like doctors, lawyers, like these insanely talented people. What a family. But Bill is one of these, I think, has been the most unique in the sense that because of, his kind of, when he went through an awkward phase as a youth, and because of that, he was able to lean into, I think, a lot of horror and off-putting type characters where he could kind of be strange. But Bill has grown into a Skarsgård. And he is shredded. Like, dude did the work for this movie. And because he is mute and deaf, everything he's doing is physicality. So his body is right. And I didn't know that he could do action like this, but he does the action in big ways. And it's not just him. He does have a stunt double here, Dennis Chernick, who I think the combination of the two, and the thing I like is, like, you can tell when Skarsgård's on screen, and you can tell more often than not when it's probably Chernick, because just the things that are happening are so insane. You're like, even with all the, Jessica Roth said this about her character, and we'll talk about her in a second. But like, even with all the training in the world for years and years and years, there are certain things that people just wouldn't be able to pull off. But the combination of what Chernick can do in the really, really crazy moments and what Skarsgård is able to do with the hand-to-hand choreography, like, he is in a lot of these scenes, and watching him do something I've never seen him do was so enjoyable because he does it so well. And there are times where he does feel a little awkward, specifically when he throws down with Yayan Ruhian. Like, anytime him and the Shaman are going one-on-one, Skarsgård is way bigger than Yayan, you know what I mean? And there are times where it can look a little awkward, but when you really are paying attention to when it's Skarsgård in the tight hand-to-hand choreography stuff, like, he's brilliant. And then just what he's able to give you from an emotional standpoint through his body language and just facial expressions, it's so powerful in the sense of, like, building the character. But then there are some really emotional moments for him too that hit hard because Bill is just embodying all that stuff solely physically. You know what I mean? Like, there is no voice for him. And the fun thing with that, specifically when playing with Quinn Copeland on screen, everything is technically taking place in his head. So when Jon Benjamin is talking, there are times where Bill can kind of be having conversations with people. And then there are some characters who are a little crazy themselves who seem to have that same capability where, like, Skarsgård can just kind of give a look or a body motion, and you hear Jon Benjamin and the people understand it. And even if you took Benjamin out, a lot of the things that he can convey physically, you do get. And I think it allows him to, like I said, layer this character in a way where the story builds up Boy, and Skarsgård just physically has to add all these things in, and then what he does physically throughout the whole movie is absolutely insane. And the other thing that I do love here is the chemistry that he has with Quinn Copeland, who plays Mina, his little sister. And anytime she pops up, like I said, the fact that they can have conversations without him talking is a lot of fun. And watching Quinn pick up on that and then play off of it, that chemistry is just excellent. And Copeland in general is just really impressive. Like, she's another one of these little girls who doesn't seem like a little girl at all. And specifically because she can't get hurt or have anything bad happen to her because she's not really there, she's just able to play into that intelligence and that comedy in ways where you're just like, damn, this little girl is really impressive. And then the other person that I think, well, the other two people that Bill has unbelievable chemistry with in the movie is Jessica Rothe, June 27. She, like I said, is kind of the muscle for the Vanderkoys, and they throw down multiple times. And that just body language and physicality on screen works so well. And Roth is another person who leans into doing as much as she can. She's very open when asked like about being the stunts, because she's in a helmet the whole movie, so it's very easy to swap people out. And she like, I did as much as I could, you know, like I learned as much as I could. She said Yayan was just so giving in that way and trying to teach her and help her and things like that. But this character has to go to like places where they could throw down with someone like Yayan or what you're getting from Boy. And there are just certain things that she can't do. And her two stunt doubles, Jacqueline Lee Gertz and Nadine Theron, you know, they put in work, man. And they must have been like the one thing that is representative in Roth's getup is her abdomen and back are shown the whole time, and they're very, very well toned. And the mixture of the three, like that's the one thing that I was starting to pay attention to try to figure out where Roth was. They must all like just been in the same workout mode where they are very physically the same, because it's seamless. Like it always feels like it's one person on screen, but what you're getting from June 27, like besides Yayan, she's my third favorite thing action wise, like what you're getting from her character and what she does. And the way that the helmet works, like there's a visor on, and words, emotions, different actions can pop up on that. So she almost also has this quality of having no voice per se, where there are other things speaking for her, even though she can speak in the movie. But it's a cool kind of parallel when you look at both her and Boy at the same time. And then obviously the third person that Skarsgård has unbelievable chemistry with is Yayan, who is phenomenal in this movie. Like he always is a little bit of a wild card in those raid movies, and he takes that wild card and dials it up insane amounts to this place where he is just like a wild animal. And specifically in the action, like he is the one that's gonna pop the most the whole movie, and he really puts in work, man. Like watching him lean into this character who is, you know, you could put him on like a Batman level, like mental physical abuse to a young teenage boy as he grows Boy into the man that's gonna take down the Vanderkoys. But watching how he plays with that and plays with the insanity elements is just a lot of fun. And then, yeah, I mean, action wise, this dude is one of the best, and he certainly brings that. And having a veteran like him on set had to be, especially when you hear about the way the cast talks about how giving he is and how wonderful he is to work with, like someone who could just bring a lot of elements of like working with someone like Szatarski on the stunts, where hey, let's bring it to these other levels. Like having a vet like that allows you to have more collaboration, right? Like Bill and Jessica and their stunt doubles are all working with, you know, this guy possibly for the first time, and doing action for some of them really for the first time. So having someone like Yayan on set had to just elevate what you're able to accomplish, and you feel that. And I like that the movie kind of takes on that insanity type vibe of him throughout the whole thing. Like it's almost like his vibes are what's coursing through this movie, and it makes it a ton of fun. And then when you just look at the rest of the cast in general, I mean, Famke Janssen is so good at being evil, and how they play with Hilda is a lot of fun. Like what they build her to be, what she actually does when we get to see her finally toward the end of the movie. Like final level type stuff. There's just a lot of fun for her to have, and there's flexibility and room for her to play, and she obviously nails all of that stuff. Michelle Dockery, as I said, kind of like the head of all the kids, is great. And one of the other things too, you have to give out shouts to the costume designer Danielle Knox, because every one of these characters has such a specific look. And Melanie is in this like all red get up, and every time she shows up, you're just like evil mastermind. Like you're clearly the number two, but you are given a lot of responsibility. And while physically you're not going to get necessarily a ton from her, she is probably the scariest of all the kids. And then Brett Gelman, who plays her brother Gideon, he is another person who's perfect for the comedy. And I really enjoyed how Gideon's arc works in this movie. Like he plays in a lot of different ways, and he interacts with more characters probably than anybody. And Gelman is just so good in all of those moments. And then when you look at the other people who show up here, Isaiah Mustafa and Andrew Koji are kind of these two dudes that boy runs into, that kind of creates this like, hey, let's hang out together. And they're hysterical. There is a bit going on with Mustafa's character Benny the whole movie that once it's established, it allows again an unbelievable amount of humor and just fun wordplay in particular for the writers to play around with. And then Koji is another one of these guys who can do the action, and he, you know, while he isn't being asked to be on the levels of the other people that we're seeing in a lot of the hand-to-hand. What he brings from an entertainment value, like he's another guy who just seems to be dialed up on way too much caffeine, and he's going 90 miles an hour, and very much is someone else who seems to very much mimic the visual presentation of the movie with his own personality. And he's extremely entertaining, very funny, and obviously is someone else who can bring a little bit of like veteranship in playing in these kind of action movies, where he's just unbelievably enjoyable. And then Sharlto Copley, who plays Glenn Vanderkoy, Melanie's husband. You know what you're getting with Sharlto anytime he's in a movie, and he's great here. You have a lot of fun with him in the first act. He's what's going on there's almost like a Hunger Games vibe to something that's going on in the universe, and he's supposed to host that thing, and that vibe exists in him the whole time, and he's coming with a different accent than you would be used to. He's not playing his normal South African accent that is how he normally speaks. So watching him it took a minute, because you're like, that is Sharlto, right? And he puts on a fun performance. And then you got to shout out the Crovetti twins, Cameron and Nicholas. They play the young versions of Bill Skarsgård, and there's not a ton for them to do per se, but there is that linking in the chemistry with Skarsgård and Quinn, because you see Mina and the young boy interact a lot in some of the flashbacks or the little bits and pieces that Skarsgård kind of can grasp. And all in all, anybody that comes into play here is fantastic. And then you just have the voice of Jon Benjamin through the whole movie, and he's perfect. Like he has this way where it's like Archer and Bob have, like from Bob's Burgers, his two animated voices that he's very well known for, have these elements that very much sound like Jon Benjamin, right? Like there's something similar to them, and it's a very similar approach in the voice because it's just his voice with Boy, but he's able to differentiate them just enough where like Boy, Bob, and Archer were all in one room and you couldn't see them, you would be able to differentiate who's talking when. And just the way he can play with those subtleties but lean into the things that bring a lot of comedy there, he's just fantastic. And like I said, that voiceover works the whole movie. And then last but certainly not least, on the music side, our composer, Ludvig Forssell. Like I said, this movie is insane, and you have to have a score and, you know, needle drops at times that play into that insanity. And I thought Forssell, in the composition side, like when you're getting the insanity score beats, it just plays really well. And that combination, like I said, this movie is so much about presentation, and the way that everybody acts and performs and does their job creates this like insane action movie that's on too much caffeine thrown into a blender, and it creates something that's fun, entertaining, and very unique visually. And I really dug Boy Kills World. So let's get the C Maniacs up, give this bad boy a score. Like I said, what you're getting from Moritz Mohr is something unique, something original. And it plays in the action realm where, yes, you can see elements to like throwback movies like Crank or Shoot 'em Up, you know, when you're kind of talking about those chaotic type of action films. But you can also feel heavy influence, specifically because Yayan is on set, of things like The Raid when it comes to that combat action. And it's just put in a presentation that we haven't seen per se before. And the usage of blood and brutal violence and just some of the wonderful gunplay and hand-to-hand choreography that we get from stunt coordinator Dawid Szatarski is so much fun to watch on screen, and then to watch your actors like Yayan and Bill Skarsgård and Jessica Rothe play into the things that they can play into. Obviously, Yayan's doing everything, but like, you know, play in as much as they can, and then have stunt doubles that just fill those gaps in perfectly. It's wonderful to watch. This whole cast is super enjoyable. The camera work vibes with everything that we just talked about as far as like how you capture it, and there's a video game element and presence to the movie that is very fun visually. And while this thing is action, there is enough of a story here to keep you invested and be emotionally invested by the end of the movie. Like, there were certain things toward the end where I was getting a little emotional, and obviously like brother sister storylines hit in a little bit different way for me, but that connection is there where it elevates it, you know, a little bit more from an action movie that really just relies on its action alone. And I like what you get. This isn't a perfect movie. Some of the dialogue isn't great, and there are moments where it feels a little too chaotic, but Moritz Mohr's vision and what he goes, specifically in the fact that this is a directorial feature debut for this guy, another person dropping bombs in the action realm first time out. But it just works in such an original way where I'm very excited to see what he does next. And the other thing that we didn't mention is Sam Raimi is a producer here. So obviously, I don't think you feel Sam coursing through this movie per se, but there are definitely elements in the over-the-topness and blood, violent actions where you can get that. And I've just seen the two of them interviewed a couple times. Like, there seems to be a good vibe there, and I think Raimi gave good guidance for Moore to get this thing into a place where you go, damn, dude, this is another one of those cool original action movies, and I really, really enjoyed Boy Kills World. I'm going 3.5 out of 5 C Maniacs. Yeah, I mean, I'm just continually happy. Like, there are two realms there are three major realms for me when it comes to movies that are my favorites. There's your comic book superhero stuff, obviously horror, and then the world of action, this combat action in particular. And for me, while the comics were dominating for so long and they've kind of slipped down a little bit, horror and combat action are just doing wonderful things all the time for me. Makes me so happy. But the question I have, of course, is, does it make you happy? Where do you land on your action movies and in the world of combat action? If you happen to jump into an AMC screened unseen screening last night and got Boy Kills World, no spoilers, but what did you think of the insane presentation that Moritz Mohr gives us? The action, the comedy, the set pieces, the cinematography, the acting from people like Bill Skarsgård and Jessica Rothe and Famke Janssen, Brett Gelman, Yayan Ruhian. Like, where do you land? What was working? What wasn't? What were your big pops? And do you think this just in general chaotic presentation ultimately worked, or was it too much at times? And if you haven't seen the movie, is this something that you would be interested in seeing? Does this check your action check boxes where you're like, yeah, I gotta go check this one out? See, man, have we hyped you up more than maybe the trailers have? And where is it on your anticipation list maybe in the year? And how excited are you for it to drop next week? Anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, on Boy Kills World, put it down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Z-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. I don't know what's next, but if you dig this vibe and this presentation, you want to show a little love and support, and you haven't yet, well, come join C-Maniac Nation. Super easy. Jump over there, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? Winter Ken here, where we grow out our roots and our beard, letting you know that you can see some new C-Man videos right up here and right down here. And if you want all those videos and show that man a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation right over there, and the C-Man will catch you on the next one.